What is up, guys, and welcome back to my top 10 unit series. Today I'm going to be covering the top 10 Moonlight 4-star units you can get in Epic 7. Now this video will be covering both PvE and PvP, so I will be ranking the units based on their overall strength, combining their strengths in PvE and PvP both. Now, to get started, we're going to start with some honorable mentions that didn't make the top 10 list, and starting off with the first honorable mention, we have Bloodblade Karin, or BBK for short. Now, Bloodblade Karin is going to be a damage dealer primarily. There are some other tanky counter builds out there, but I'll go over that in a second. So yeah, she's a pretty good damage dealer. For PvE, she's mostly used as a dog walker or fodder farmer, which isn't really used as much anymore because you can take a full team of max level units and get the penguins as EXP instead, and you don't lose any XP. So she's not really used anymore in PvE too much for dog walking. She is used though in A13 and Banshee 13 as a one-shotter for the first wave, mostly for A13 because her requirements are a bit lower because you run a second AoE damage dealer as well, but you can use her in Banshee 13 if you get her stats high enough as well to one-shot the first wave. So that's pretty much it for her PvE uses. For PvP, she's pretty much used either as a cleaver with her huge AoE damage output, or there's some weird builds where she's on a tanky counter set with Moonlight Dreamblade, and it's called Degen BBK, and I don't really recommend it, but it is fun to play around with if you have the spare counter gear and artifact to do so. Now for her skills, her S3 is just a huge AoE nuke. It also does damage to herself. You get an extra turn when you kill someone. Soul Burn is really cheap and it actually makes her do a lot more damage. Her S1 is a basic attack that will heal her with, like, it's basically like a lifesteal set kind of built into the S1. That's why she was a really good dog walker in the past. She also gets CR when someone dies on the enemy team. And her S2 is as she gets lower, her attack, defense, and speed increases. Synergizes really well with her S3 because, as you can see, she basically sacrifices 20% of her HP before she uses this skill. So yeah, she does a lot of AoE damage, very, very, very potent as a offensive cleaver. That is why she made it onto the honorable mentions. But there are better cleavers out there nowadays. You can run like Judge Kisei, like even Arby's okay. Green Villager's pretty good with his speed imprint, and also Cleave itself is just pretty weak at the moment in the current meta, which is why she did not land on the top 10 list. Now, the second of 3 honorable mentions that I'm going to mention today is going to be Kitty Clarissa. Kitty Clarissa is mostly a PvE unit. She's used in PvE as a cleanser, very, very good in Hall of Trials because she does have the full cleanse in her S3. Not full cleanse, but is a 2-turn decreased debuff duration, which will end up being a full cleanse in most situations. She also has her S1 to make a forced dual attack, kind of like how Aros's work. And yeah, very, very strong. Makes her, whenever she goes, to bring her DPS with her, so you do a lot of damage. And her S2 is okay because you can strip basically if it lands by reducing buff duration on the target by 2 turns. And yeah, this can ignore effect resist if you burn it. So it makes her very, very potent in like Rage. She can be very strong. She can be strong on some Abyss floors. You can take her into bosses that need strip. You can take her into bosses where you need cleansing, like Julie's Council, or even Queen that you need to dispel or strip for. You can just take her into Hall of Trials as well. She's very good at a lot of Hall of Trials bosses, which is why she is ending up in the honorables mentions. Now, she is still very strong in PvP as a cleanser. You can use her S3 to cleanse, right? And then you can, have a lot of forced dual attacks. She's just hard to build because she needs a lot of stats if you're going to use her in PvP. You need effect resist to cleanse. You need some HP and defense to make sure you're tanky enough. And you want speed so you can actually take a turn and cleanse your team, at a reasonable amount of time. So you want to make her at least like 230 speed, I'd say, while keeping tanky stats, while having effect resist like above like 150%. So she is very hard to build for PvP, but still usable, and I think not terrible in PvP, actually pretty decent as a cleanser. So yeah, that is why she's on my honorable mention list. You won't see her too much, and you won't really benefit from building her early game, so she is more geared for mid to late game players. And the last honorable mention, which you guys might think is kind of strange because he is pretty strong in RTA, and you can use him in some offense arena teams as well, is going to be Assassin Cidd, or a Cidd. Now, Assassin Cidd is a pretty interesting unit. He has a very strong silence in his S3 that does a lot of damage. If you burn it, you can one-shot squish units pretty easily. Also push back their CR even if you don't kill and silence them. So even if you don't kill, it is neutering that unit essentially if they don't have immunity on them. And you also get evasion, which will make you survive a little bit longer. and it removes souls, so it's very good for neutering openers and teams that are speed contesting. His S2 is basically whenever someone dies, he just gets an attack buff and CR push. So if you kill someone with his S3, you get the CR push and you get attack buff, and you have the evasion buff, so it's very, very hard to kill you before you can lap again. And his S1 is just a chance to defense break, not really used too much. You're basically just like a one and done, maybe you get 1 or 2 S1s off, and if you're lucky enough, and by that point you probably already won the fight. So yeah, in PvE, not really any usage. I don't think people will take him anywhere in PvE, so absolutely zero usage in PvE. In PvP though, he's very strong. He is a counter initiator. You use him to snipe out like Cereses, F10As, Athleticas, right? Because his base speed is crazy high. Max Awaken is the highest in the game, 128, tied with some other units. So you use him to counter speed contesters because he's very fast and he scales with speed, so he actually does a lot of damage while being built really fast. He also has a crit chance self-imprint, making it so that it is really easy to build him, because crit chance is one of the hardest stats to, you know, slap onto speedy units. So yeah, makes him very good at that, what he does. Just basically one-shots openers. You pick him in RTA to counter, like cleave teams as well. You can pick him in RTA to counter, like control teams that rely on taking first turn. So very strong. The only thing is he only has that one use of countering openers. So that is why he's on the honorable mentions list and not in the top 10 in my opinion. Now to get started with the top 10 list itself. We are finished with honorable mentions at number 10. It may come to a surprise to some people, but I know there are a lot of people that love this unit, is Blaze Dingo. Now Blaze Dingo is a very unique unit. It is one of my favorite units in the game. Now despite his appearance and despite his class, you're probably thinking he doesn't do anything besides heal because he's a soul weaver and looks pretty happy all the time, right? But you're wrong. He does heal, but he does massive amount of damage while healing. So in PvE, he's going to be used basically anywhere in raid, to be honest. You can slot him in as a single target damage dealer. And the best part is he heals your team as well. So you might only need to bring one other healer with him, and he can take your other quote-unquote sub-healing role while dealing damage. So you could take him in raid, you could take him in Abyss, you could take him in A13 is very good in, you could take him into probably some expeditions as well, and he'll do the job just fine. Now in PvP, you can build him as a bruiser, but he's not used too much there, but he is okay in PvP. I've seen some people use him as like a bruiser. He's very nice to have because he has so much healing for your team while being able to output a lot of damage. So his S3 is that he just heals himself and an ally, and he also gets invincibility and gets an attack buff. Now you'll see that it says that the amount he recovers with his healing is proportional to his attack, unlike most soul weavers, whether it'll be the caster's health or the target's health. Now this incentivizes him to actually build damage, which fits with his kit very, very nicely, because basically him having more attack as a damage dealer will make him heal more. You know, see the soul burn effect, it is kind of expensive at 20 souls, but it'll make the duration of the buffs that is granted going to be 1 turn longer, and you get an extra turn. So yeah, you can give invincibility to an ally and yourself for 2 turns and 3 turns respectively, and you get an extra turn. Very, very, very underrated in my opinion. Now Blaze Dingo's S2 is just an AoE attack, which will heal the ally with the lowest HP, and if you crit, you will just basically auto or S1 a random enemy, and the amount you heal to your ally is going to be proportional to the damage you deal, which will also make you want to do more damage and build more damage on him to heal more. Now his S1 is just the basic attack that will heal the ally with lowest HP. It's kind of similar to Rowana and like Ruel's S1, where you just heal someone. I'm sorry, not Rowana. Rowana doesn't heal. Just Ruel and Destina who heal people. And yeah, the amount recovered for Blaze Dingo will actually scale with your damage as well. So you'll see all of his healing scales with his damage or attack. So you're just going to want to build straight damage and somewhat tanky on him if you want to use him in PvP as well. So his crit imprint also makes it very, very easy to gear him to do more damage. You can see you get almost 15% crit from the imprint if you max it, which is pretty easy because he is a 4-star. You'll be able to do it in a fair amount of time. So yeah, he's a very, very solid option for PvE. If you need a single target DPS and you need more healing on your team, you can just do it in one slot. Why not do it with Blaze Dingo if you have him and get lucky and pull him? He can DPS and heal for you. Very, very good unit. Very underrated in my opinion. He needs more love. I think he's very, very strong. At number 9, we have Inferno Khawazu, a pretty recently released unit. He has a kit kind of similar to Carrot and Silverblade Araminta in that he revolves around burning his units, and he's really, really good in PvP in RTA, in Arena offense, especially as a counter pick. He's a very powerful counter pick. Now, PvE he doesn't have any uses really. I guess you can use him as a single target DPS, as a substitute for other units, but I don't really recommend it. His kit is mostly geared for PvP. Now, starting with his skills, his S3 is an AoE, or not an AoE, it's a single target attack, and it'll attack an enemy, and it'll dispel all buffs, and you will inflict 2 burns, and after the turn ends, so right after you use the skill, after the burn effects either apply or don't apply, you will detonate them, and what happens is you'll blow them up and do a lot of damage. Most likely, if you land 2 burns on a squishy target, you will one-shot them. Now, when you have Vigor, which is going to be in his S2, you ignore effect resist, you are basically guaranteed to 100% land the burn effects. If you mull it, the S3 will always be 100% chance, but you still have to take into account effect resist and effectiveness and whatnot. But when you have Vigor, you just ignore all of that and it will just guarantee land no matter what, 2 burns for 2 turns and detonate. Now his S2 is going to be Malchus's power. Basically, when you suffer an AoE attack, you just cleanse yourself, push yourself up, and you get the Vigor, which will give you bonus attack and defense and will improve your S3. Now, it also heals you a bit, so it is very nice, and it'll heal you based on your attack, which you're going to be stacking on Khawazu. You don't need any crit on him, to be honest. You just go full attack and speed, and you go somewhat tanky. His S1 is just a basic attack that has a burn chance, and when you're Vigor, you inflict 2 burns, which is a crazy amount, and you also have the effect chance increased to 100% as well, although you don't ignore effect resist. Now, if you soul burn, you can get an extra turn with S1, so it's really nice to cycle, because his S3 is like Carrots, where it's only a 3-turn cooldown when you enhance it. So if you just burn and just keep cycling, like you'll get like 2 S3s or 3 S3s off in a fight. And to be honest, if you get 2 off in a fight, the game is pretty much over at that point. So yeah, very strong counter pick. He can just delete DPS units. You pick him into like AoE units. He's good in like into SSB because he cleanses right after a counter attack or S3. He's good into Landy. He's even good into Carrots to chunker, although not as much. So yeah, very good into AoE units, very powerful in PvP if you can pick him in the right situations. You can pick him in offense into certain teams that have like Landy as well, and you'll do fine. Into Surin, you'll do fine as well. So yeah, PvE not much usage though, so he is lower on the list at number 9. So at number 8, we have a Knight Troublemaker Crozet. Now, he was meta for a short period of time a couple months ago last season. He's a very strong defensive Knight. Basically, in PvE, he doesn't have really any uses. In PvP, he's mostly only used in RTA, although you can use him in Guild Wars defense and Arena defense as well, and even offense teams if you like to run Protect the 1 carry comps. So yeah, his S3 is going to be basically he dispels all debuffs from himself and 1 ally, and he also gives them increased defense and himself, and he'll give something called a class enhancement to the ally for 3 turns. Now this will depend on what class the ally is. So if they're a Thief, Warrior, Ranger, or Mage, you'll see they get crit hit resistance, which is going to be the case most of the time because you're only going to really be using Troublemaker Crozet with like SSB, Landy, Carrot, or S10, which all are going to be in the first category, which is crit hit resistance. Or if you end up using it on a Knight or Soul Weaver to, you know, get them out of a sticky situation because they're getting low, like, you know, shield and make sure you dispel your well so she can revive next turn, then you're going to give them a barrier which is proportional to your health. The defense buff is a really nice bonus, very powerful buff, one of the best buffs in the game. This S2 is going to be whenever someone in the back row of your team takes damage, you take 20% of the damage. Also, when they're attacked, you get CR. Troublemaker Crozet himself gets CR, and he has a chance to counterattack. The damage suffered goes up to, I think it goes to 35% if I'm correct. It might actually be higher, it might be 40%. Yeah, I think it's 40%. So it's very high. He's just very good at soaking damage, so basically your back row unit is just super tanky and will be able to get a lot of turns off. So yeah, very good when paired with like S10A, Landy, and Carrot in my opinion. You want to run him with some Soul Weavers though, because he does take a lot of damage. His S1 is just a stun. When you Soul Burn it, you get a 60% chance, and when it is not your turn, when you're counterattacking, right, when your backline unit gets hit, your chance gets higher to stun. So some people run him on counter, but I just recommend him on speed set and tankiness. You're not going to really bank on the counters too much, although it is a nice bonus to have. And him stun locking with his soul burn is really annoying. If he just soul burns every turn and stun locks you, you kind of just get RNG'd and lose. So yeah, very powerful unit at defending his carry. The only reason that number 8 is because he does take a lot of damage, so you can just focus him down, and he does have some counters. You can pick like Falcon or Clarion and just soul burn on him, basically one-shot him with an AoE attack almost. So yeah, not too high on the list because of that reason, but he is still a very powerful unit and Knight for PvP. Now with Troublemaker Crozet, we have another knight at number 7. We have Crimson Armin. So Crimson Armin is a very meta unit at the moment, very powerful. She's very niche in PvE, I'd say, because she does have an invincibility in S3 and immunity. So you can use her in some bosses where you need to cheese like invincibility, like against Dark Corvus floor 85 in Abyss, if you're struggling with that one. Or if you just need immunity in general, but I don't really recommend her in PvE, to be honest. She has a kit more suited for PvP only. PvP, she's very good on defense teams, Guild Wars, and Arena. Very strong in RTA as a knight blind pick. And you can use her in offense as well if you have her as your main build knight. So what she does is, yeah, she has immunity and invincibility. Pretty simple, but very powerful. Basically makes it so for one turn cycle, none of your team can take any damage unless they get stripped. And then they can start getting debuffed as well. Her S2 is basically like an Aureus effect. So basically what happens is like you just, not an Aureus effect, Adamant Shield effect. Your team will just take less damage. So you can stack this with Aureus, and then yeah, it's going to be a lot of damage reduction for your team. So very good at mitigating damage. And her S1 is a provoke. It goes to 100% like FCC when you mull it. So very annoying to deal with, especially if you're attacking units with 0 effect resist, where you don't need any effectiveness at all. You just provoke them down and lock them, and it's very annoying to deal with. Kind of similar to, or exactly the same as FCC, except that Crimson Armin scales with defense, where FCC scales with health. So usually Crimson Armins will do a little bit less damage than FCCs do. So yeah, very powerful pick in RTA and PvP in general. If you need a knight that needs to mitigate your team, you can just build Crimson Armin if you have her. Like, you don't need to, you know, cry that you don't have FCC, although FCC is very good. But Crimson Armin is a very good substitute for FCC. Very powerful. You can just think of her S3 as like the skill nullifier from FCC's S3, and you could think of the S2 as kind of like the barrier reducing, and the S1 is just like the provoke, just like FCC, right? Not the same, but very similar in what they do. So that is why she is at the number 7 spot. And honestly, she could be a lot higher if she was good in PvE, but since this is a list or ranking for PvE and PvP overall, she's at the number 7 spot for overall Moonlight 4-star units. Now, right after Crimson Armin at number 7, we have the number 6 unit, Sinful Angelica. Now, at the time of this video, Sinful Angelica is the only ML version of Angelica out, but I think the light version of Angelica is coming out soon, and as of the video recording date today, actually we don't know if it's a 4-star or 5-star, so that unit, if she's a 4-star, she might be really broken. There are rumors, but for now we only have Sinful Angie here, so we'll get started on that. Sinful Angie is a dark Soul Weaver, but the weird thing is she isn't really a healer. You'll see that her kit is very different from other Soul Weavers. So she's in PvE, she can be used in Wyvern one-shot teams, and that's pretty much it, to be honest. That's the only place I actually see her in PvE. In PvP, she's used a lot on offense and a lot in RTA. Those are the 2 areas she's used in, but she's very good in the right team comps. So she's really good in offensive cleaves, and she's really good at countering revive units like RB, Maid Chloe. So if you see an RB or Maid Chloe in defense, you can bring her and she's very strong. She's good in cleave because she has an attack buff, and she has a mechanic where when she is buffed with her immortality, people cannot revive. So you'll see her S3 is a immortality, right? When her immortality is on, people will not be able to revive. It will be listed in her S2, but just keep that in mind. And she also gets a attack and speed buff to her allies. So really OP. I know back in the day when I used to cleave, I used Sinful Angie with Green Vildred, because Green Vildred has speed scaling as well. So the increased attack and speed was like a attack buff plus to the Vildred, so it's a very powerful S3. Now her S2 is her main skill. It's going to be when the caster is immortal, enemies cannot revive. So when her immortality is off or stripped, people can actually still revive. So you want to build her with high effect resist if you want to use her in RTA. In Cleave for Arena offense and Guild Wars offense, you don't really need too much because you should be winning in the first few turns anyways, but it is safer to bring effect resist just in case you don't one-shot. So yeah, and also whenever you kill someone and they cannot be revived, you heal your team as well, although it is not too much of a heal. Now her S1 is going to be that when she's immortal, she has a dual attack that's forced from the highest attack ally, and you have a chance to decrease attack, which isn't too important. It's mostly about the forced dual attack. So if you S3 and get another turn off at the end of the cleave, you can just bring your DPS again, and it's very powerful. So you have very strong offensive unit for arena cleaving, and in RTA she can be used as a solid counter as well, but you need to build kind of like a team comp around her because she cannot be in the battle for too long because she doesn't have any sustain, and she's pretty squishy because she's a Soul Weaver. So yeah, that is why she's at the number 6 spot. She just counters, basically she counters RB and Maid Chloe, 2 of the best ML5s, if not top 3 for sure. in the game at the moment, and if a 4-star Moonlight can counter that pretty easily, then she deserves to be on this top 10 list for sure. So now as we start breaking into the top 5, we're going to start at the number 5, Alot himself. Now Alot is going to be mostly only ever used in PvP cleave. The only usage I see for him in PvE is going to be in like Earth Expedition for the CR boost in his S2 to break through the boss's pushback and fatigue. But other than that, he's only really used in PvP offense for Arena and Guild Wars, and you can use him in RTA if you cleave a lot. So going over his skills, his S3 is just an AoE silence. The best part about this skill actually is his soul burn, because you get an extra turn and he can hold Taga Hell, so you can guarantee that you can get an extra turn. And the reason why this is nice is because his S2 is a 2-turn cooldown, which is his main point of his kit. It's going to be that he increases attack of an ally, and then he increases CR by 100%, basically giving them another turn. And what it does, it just makes your DPS be able to build with 0 speed and full damage subs, and you can just boost them up to the front if Alot is fast enough. So that means if you S2 and there's 1 turn cooldown left on your next turn, you just soul burn S3, then you can S2 right after, so you can do it twice in 2 turns. It's actually pretty insane. Usually you don't even need the second S2, but by chance if you do, then you can just soul burn the S3, S2, and it's very, very powerful. Your DPS will get 2 turns with 0 speed very quickly. His S1 is just a basic attack that increases CR. You won't really use this too much. The fight will be over within his first S2 or his second S2 for the most part. But it is nice if you need to turn cycle faster and you're in a situation where you're S1ing a bit. So yeah, Alot's very powerful PvP offense unit. You don't see him in defense, but he is one of the best enablers for cleave. If you have him and you're looking to cleave, make sure you build him. Just slap on a lot of speed on him. You don't need any other stat. All you need him to do is go first and you'll be good. Now at the number 4 spot, we have one of my personal favorite units, Surin or Tempest Surin for short. Now if you guys have fought her on defense or RTA, you guys probably hate playing against this unit. I do too, that's why I use her all the time, and she's in my defense for Guild Wars and Arena, and she's a staple. Now in recent times, she's fallen out of meta, so instead of being maybe like number 2 or number 3 where she was before, she's at the number 4 spot because she is slightly falling out of favor at the moment. Now in PvE, she's not really used at all. PvP though, she is a beast. She's used in defense teams for Arena and Guild Wars. You can use her in RTA. You can even use her in offense teams against debuff heavy teams. Now going over her skills, her S3 is an AoE attack. You can put Unbuffable and Silence, very, very strong debuffs to neuter your support units. It also does more damage proportional to your lost health, so the lower you are, the more damage you do. And it does really decent damage. You can also soul burn it, and it does a lot of damage. And if you run Alexa's Basket on her and it procs, the Gab procs, and then you soul burn it, you're basically doing like 10k, 12k damage to very squishy units, given that you've built her pretty well. Now her S2 is going to be her big skill that is really annoying and probably everyone hates. Basically means that you cannot take more than 51% of your max HP in one hit. And when you're 70% HP or less, you just cleanse at the end of an enemy's turn, and then you get stealth and you get CR pushed. Very overloaded skill. And it works with barriers too. So if I have a barrier on and the barrier is say 52% HP of my max HP, right? Like an FCC barrier, and then someone hits my barrier and it breaks me down to that 1%, then I'll still get CR pushed even though I didn't really take any damage. So very, very nice that it works with barriers. Makes her and FCC a very nice combo. I used to see her and FCC together all the time in Arena defense and Guild Wars defense, but nowadays they've started falling out of favor because of Researcher countering her pretty well, and some other, a lot of AoE units coming out that are very good against Surin. So Surin is pretty weak against AoE if you guys haven't noticed, because you can just spam this through the stealth. But yeah, against single target teams, she's very powerful, pretty much one of the most annoying units to play against, similar to how S10A works. Her S1 is a very basic attack that has a chance to inflict bleeding. This does pretty decent damage too. Nothing too crazy though. So yeah, she's basically just going to be turn cycling really fast with her S2. And then with her S3 on a 3-turn cooldown, with her CR pushing, she's just going to spam it over and over, and it's just really, really, really annoying to play against. So yeah, very strong unit for PvP. If you guys are struggling with the defense team, you can just slap Surin in there for now, and she will do your dirty work for you and protect your Arena defenses and Guild Wars defenses. And now we're finally in the top 3, guys. So at the number 3 spot, we have Challenger Dominiel or Cidd. So Cidd is a very, very powerful PvE unit. You can take her as a single target DPS because she does crazy single target damage, and she also doesn't have any debuffs on her S1, so you could bring her into like every single boss basically. She's also very good in PvP for Arena offense cleaving and in RTA as an offense cleaver. You don't see her in defense teams, She's also situational in RTA, and you need a team comp around her for offense, specifically a cleave team, because she is very niche in PvP, but in her niche she is one of the best, if not the best, in her role. So for her skills, her S3 is a turn reset, but it also gives you CR to your entire team, so it's a CR push, and you increase crit chance of everyone. So in PvE this is really nice because it works like Furious and Wyvern, where your crit chance threshold for your team can be lower than it needs to be. It can only be 50% now, right, instead of 100%, so it's really, really nice. The extra turn is really nice because you get to nuke right after in her S1. Her S2 is a passive in that whenever someone crits, she gets stacking damage on her next S1, and also whenever someone crits on her team, she gets a CR push. So very, very nice in Cleave. You can see how this works. Say you have like a Bazaar, or you have a Cerise or Athletica, right, and they go first and they crit everyone, you get a 40% CR push on Cidd, and she gets to bump up to the front, and then can S3 and then push up her entire team and crit chance buff them, and it's really, really, really strong. But in PvE it's very, very strong as well, because if you pair with an AoE DPS with high crit, let's say like Karin, you could perma buff him with S3 crit chance and he just AoEs over and over, or like Yuna or RB with his S3, right? You're just bumping up Cidd over and over. So yeah, Cidd doesn't have to be built super fast, just like mediocre speed, and then it'll seem like she's very fast because of how much she gets pushed up by her team. And then her S1 is her huge nuke, so it is an S1, but it does so much damage, specifically because her S2 makes it do more, and the scaling on her S1 is crazy. And if you soul burn it, it does a crazy amount of damage. Soul burn S1 does the most damage out of every S1 in the game by far. It's a very strong skill. If you defense break bosses in like Hell Raid, and then you soul burn S1 with setup and attack buff, you can actually one-shot bosses in Hell Raid. It's that powerful. In PvP and Cleave, she's really good as a clean-up single target unit. Your cleaver goes and she gets another turn, she just soul burn S1s, or she can go before her cleaver and then wipe out the very high threat unit before your cleaver goes. So yeah, very powerful in PvE and PvP. That's why she is in the top 3 for me. If you have her and you need a single target DPS or PvE, slot her in. You can use her over Cidd. She's better than Cidd if you manual, in my opinion, but if you want to auto, Cidd is better, and Cidd can be used in probably a little bit more situations later on. But yeah, Cidd, very powerful early mid-game PvE unit, if not one of the best for single target damage. And in PvP, if you like cleaving, build her ASAP. She's a staple in cleave comps at the moment. And second on the list, at the number 2 spot, we have Champion Zerato. The Champion Zerato is very strong in PvE. He is a very good Hell Raid, Azimag 13, Abyss, Labyrinth unit. You can even use him in like Dark Expedition if you wanted. In PvP, he's very, very good as a counter pick to debuffers. You build him as a bruiser, and he's a very, very strong pick against people that spam debuffs. And he's basically a must ban in RT against those kinds of units. So going over his skills, S3 is an AoE attack. It has decreased defense and decreased attack. Very, very powerful. Also has increased defense on him, so it makes him very tanky. And it also will ignore effect resist if you soul burn it. So it is a very nice way to, make units very squishy. If you just S3 and you land on Soul Weavers, they'll be very squishy, and with the defense break, you just one-shot them if it lands. Very good way to neuter DPS as well because of the decreased attack. His S2 is going to be that he has a 100% chance to counter whenever he is debuffed after being attacked, and he's immune to stun, sleep, and decreased hit chance. So basically, he cannot be debuffed at all, because if you land a debuff on him, he'll just counterattack. And the reason why you don't want to do that is because his S1 is a 2-target attack that will transfer the debuffs he has and put it on your units. So you just put him on lifesteal set, and then whenever you land debuffs on him, he's going to, or whenever they land debuffs on your Zerato, he'll just bat back, heal himself, and then transfer the debuffs, making him a very hard counter to debuff heavy teams. Also, his S1 will heal even more, proportional to his max HP. So if you slap him on lifesteal set, he actually heals so much and is so tanky on a bruiser build, and he is just so annoying to deal with because the enemy team's debuffers, right? They're trying to debuff you, but they're in fact debuffing their own team. So yeah, very powerful in PvP as well as a counter pick. PvE, he's a beast. If you haven't built him ASAP, he'll carry you early game PvP for sure, because there's so many Cerises, Fairy Tail Tenebrias, and other debuffers out there. And in PvE, he's very strong as a sustained unit. You can use him to dog walk. Asmodnak, he's really strong. And Raid, he's required for some Hell Raid bosses to auto. So make sure you build him ASAP to carry you in PvE and PvP. Now last, but certainly not least on our top 10 list, at the number 1 spot, you guys have probably seen about him or heard about him, it is General Purrgis. Now General Purrgis is going to be, in PvE, your best Wyvern tank option unless you're one-shotting Wyvern, which most people don't until they get to super late game. So yeah, best Wyvern tank. In PvP, he is first pick worthy in RTA, very strong in defense teams, very strong in offense teams as an attack buffer, just very OP everywhere, pretty much. Besides, I guess in PvE he's only OP in Wyvern, but Wyvern is going to be most of your farming anyways, from early game to late game. So yeah, very powerful unit in what he does. He has a attack buff in his S3. It has a chance to stun at 100% when you max Mool it. It's a 2-turn attack buff, and it actually does okay damage. So yeah, the 100% stun is really nice because it is kind of random on what units it will stun. It can even go into units with immunity, but if it lands on DPS units, it's actually like a huge win, because obviously you lap them and they lose a turn. But the thing is, with the attack buff that you provided on your team, they're most likely going to get one shot without even getting a turn off. His S2 is his big kicker skill for Wyvern. So every time he gets attacked, he gets a CR push of 15%, and with his exclusive equipment, this goes to 18%. So in Wyvern, this is really nice because Wyvern will hit your front line 3 times. So you get the CR push 3 times if Purrg is in your team and tanking, so it'll reduce the speed requirements of your Wyvern team by a lot. Also in PvP, it really deters cleave, because if cleave units AoE and they hit Purrg, they're actually going to push up his team and himself, so he can maybe stun right after, or his team might be able to disrupt, and it really just messes up cleave. Also very good in just general team comps, because yeah, you're just getting a lot of CR over the entire fight, so it's a very nice skill to have on his kit. His S1 is just going to be a basic attack that has a 75% chance to provoke at max Mola, and it scales with his max health. The thing is, the scaling on this is crazy. So actually, when you attack buff yourself and attack and you crit, you're going to be seeing Purrgis like almost half health full DPS units. He does a lot of damage despite feeling like he shouldn't be doing that much, because he has so much utility, but he actually does a lot with his S1. So yeah, you just S3 at the start of the battle, try to attack buff your team and try to stun random units, and then you just get CR pushed over time, and you're just S1ing high priority units or units that you want to try to provoke, and you're just doing a lot of damage with Purrg over time. So you have very top tier unit, the best ML 4-star in my opinion, because he's so damn good in Wyvern 13, one of the hunts you're going to be farming like 90% of the time. And in PvP, he is first pick worthy in RTA. You see him all the time in defense. People take him in offense as an attack buffer. Very powerful unit. If you have him, build him ASAP, guys. Like, use him in your Wyvern team, make your Wyvern team requirements lower, make your Wyvern team faster, and then build him for PvP as well. You can build him for Wyvern and PvP at the same time with the same build. He doesn't really need to be on crazy gear, guys, for PvP. You can just put him on your Wyvern build and put him in PvP, and he will carry your PvP teams on defense. People will not want to attack him because you can't really cleave him that well. In offense, he has an attack buff, so you'll make your DPS do so much more damage. Just really annoying to deal with when you're facing him, and really strong when he's in your hands. So yeah, build him ASAP, guys. He is very OP. If you guys don't have him, it's alright. There's other options in place of him and what he can do. But if you get him and eventually pull him or use him ASAP. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my top 10 ML 4-stars guide. Keep in mind, this is my own opinion, and that if you guys have any disagreements, let me know down in the comments down below. You guys might have more experience with some 4-stars more than I do. And also keep in mind, guys, that at the time of this video's release, we don't even know if the Light Angelica or ML Angelica that was teased on August 18th is a 4-star or not. I think that she will be, and most people do. So if she is a 4-star, she's not on this list. I apologize, guys. This video came out before her release and her skill release. But yeah, we will go over her kit more in depth later in another video, and I will post in the comments down below where I think she would place on this ranking if she was added in. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and as always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot, and I'll be back with another video soon.